Are the Milwaukee Bucks a real contender in the Eastern Conference, or are they just going to have another disappointing season? Let's talk about it. I want to start off with the positives, and we can end on the negatives, and then I'll give you my final thoughts. The first positive of their offseason was I think they got 3 good additions on the free agency market. DeLon Wright, a good backup point guard, to replace Patrick Beverley, who you lost in free agency. I also like the addition of Gary Trent Jr., who you got really cheap. You've seen Gary Trent in the past play with Damian Lillard and be the most effective. He's like your stereotypical 3-and-D guard. I know there's always questions if Gary Trent's actually a good NBA player or if he's just kind of like an empty stats guy too. If Gary Trent can play good for the Milwaukee Bucks, he can prove that he is a quality role player and eventually get a bigger long-term contract after this year, maybe with the Bucks, maybe with a different team. The last signing I really liked was Taurean Prince, who didn't play the best for the Lakers, but once again, it's just a quality role player. He's, a tall wing who can shoot and defend a little bit and rebound. At the end of the day, that's all you want. For next season, the second positive is you're going to have a full season with Doc Rivers as your coach. I know he's a divisive coach, but he's still a championship level coach. We've seen that he's been able to coach good teams, so I'm not too worried about Doc Rivers. You're going to have a full year with him. You're not going to deal with the Adrian Griffin firing midway through the year. You're not going to have to deal with Terry Stotts stepping down in the offseason. You're going to have a full year of continuity with your coaches, which you need to be a championship level team. The third positive is you're going to have another season with the big 3 of Dame, Giannis, Chris Middleton. If you want to call it the big 4 and add Brook Lopez in there, I'm fine with it. Once again, continuity is big. You're going to have that again. The fourth positive is you look at last season and you could attribute the demise to injuries, which we saw in the regular season, which bled into the playoffs. Giannis missed big time against the Indiana Pacers. Dame missed big time against the Indiana Pacers. Brook Lopez was riddled with injuries the entire season. Chris Middleton has been an injury-prone guy the last couple seasons. Your hope is that next season, those injuries won't matter as much and you can be healthy and really be a top team in the Eastern Conference, really pose a threat to teams like the Celtics and teams like the Knicks and teams like the 76ers. And you look out west and you see the Nuggets and the Timberwolves and the Thunder, all those top teams. You feel like you can pose a threat to them if you're healthy. Now, this is where you get to the negatives. We've seen it time and time again where good teams will get injured in the playoffs and we'll go, okay, well, if they were healthy, they were going to win. And we get to the next season and they're hurt again and they lose again. We saw it with the Los Angeles Clippers all those years. Kawhi, Paul George, we always said it. If they're healthy, they have a chance, and they were never healthy. Can we trust Giannis to be healthy in the playoffs? He's shown 2 years in a row now where his injuries have held the team back, and it's not his fault, but that's something to look at. Damian Lillard's not a young player anymore. We also have to look at him and go, is your body ready? Is injury concerns always going to be there for you too? Chris Middleton, at this point, you have to assume he's going to deal with injuries next year. He has the last almost 3 years, so Chris Middleton feels like an injury-prone guy to me. Brook Lopez, once again, is always hurt. Those are things that scare me, and it's not necessarily, just because it happened last year, it won't happen next year. That's not always the case. The second thing I look at is, while you did add 3 good role players, you didn't get marginally better like other teams in the Eastern Conference, right? I mentioned 2 teams earlier at the top, like the New York Knicks, like the Philadelphia 76ers, and if you look at those 2 teams, on paper at least, they got much better, right? The Knicks add Mikal Bridges to their already stacked team. You also look at teams like the 76ers, right? They added Paul George to their team. They added a lot of nice role players onto their team. Eric Gordon and Andre Drummond. They had a good offseason as well. You look at those teams and say, okay, they got better. We can look at them and say they got better. I can't look at the Bucks and go, they definitely got better. The last negative is a lot of their young guys, they've done a bad job of developing. We can look at guys like AJ Green. He probably got the most minutes out of any of the young guys on the team. I like him, but he's not a high ceiling guy, right? He's a guy who probably will have the highest chance of helping them next year. You look at guys like Andre Jackson, another guy I like, but I look at their depth and I go, is he really going to find minutes next year? Probably not. Maybe some spot minutes. Maybe you can convince me he gets more minutes than DeLon Wright, or maybe you can take Pat Connaughton's minutes. I don't know. Maybe he gets in there, but probably not. Beauchamp has been a guy we've been looking at, are you ready to help? And he hasn't. It's almost time we look at him and throw him in the same camp as a Jordan Nwora a couple years ago, where it's okay, he's not going to hit for us. We're going to have to move on. They drafted A.J. Johnson this year, maybe the rawest prospect. I know he's one of the youngest guys in the draft, and he was a guy who didn't even play in college, didn't play much overseas, averaged like 2 points or something. Like, obviously he could have a good career, but he's not going to help you next year. I would imagine he's in the G League. So the Milwaukee Bucks have a lot of older guys that have those injuries concerns, and you don't have young guys to kind of carry you through that 82-game season to get to that point when the playoffs, you can go, okay, now we can go balls to the walls, and now we can really throw our body on the line and not have to worry about injuries as much. Overall, my final thoughts on the Bucks are, I think they're in the conversation, right? If I was a Bucks fan, I wouldn't be totally convinced we're going to the championship, but I wouldn't lose all hope as well. There's always the chance that if the Milwaukee Bucks are healthy in the playoffs, I think they could beat any team in the Eastern Conference. But are they going to be healthy? Okay, guys, it's time to let me know. Are the Milwaukee Bucks a top team in the Eastern Conference, or are they a second-tier team? I don't know. Let me know.